Hello, it does look like we are online. That is pretty cool. Finally, we're online. Took us a while, but hey, we're here. All right, I want to do something. I feel like the main branch is stable enough. I want to enable protection. Let's see, branches. Classic branch protection have not been enabled. Define branch rules, disable force pushing, prevent branches from being deleted. Yep. Can we do that? Rule set name. What about just main? Enforcement status, say active, and exempt roles, teams, and apps from this rule set by adding them. Ah, okay. Could exempt myself. Adding the default branch. Yeah, include the default branch and needs pull request to update. Restrict creations to create matching refs. Sure. Restrict updates. Only allow users with bypass permission to update matching refs. Restrict deletions. Require linear history. Require merge queue. Merges must be performed via a merge queue. Merge method would be raybase and merge. View concurrency is 5. Minimum group size is 1. Maximum group size is 5. Wait a minute. Be merged in a group. Wait time to meet minimum group size. I don't require merge queue, but I do want that to be linear. Merges must be performed via merge queue. Require all queue entries to pass required checks. Yep, status check timeout is 60 minutes. Probably just like 5 minutes. 5 or 10 minutes, I think, because right now we only take about 2 or 3 minutes to finish the status check. Wait time to meet the minimum group size. Just 1 minute for now. Deployments to succeed. Require signed, require pull request before merging. Yep. Required approvals, 0. Dismiss approvals when new commits are being pushed. Sure. But now we don't require approvals because there's only one person, that's me, working on this. Request pull request review from Copilot. Sure. Allow the merge method. Only raybase. Require the status checks to pass. Yep. Require branches to be up to date before merging. Do not require status checks on creation. Search for checks. No results. Wait a minute. I thought that's just a build. We do have a build, right? Status checks let you know if your commits meet the conditions set for. Yep. Checks and commit statuses. Checks. How do I create a check? GitHub Actions generates checks, not commit statuses when workflows are run. Swift. Add Swift. Any source. Why is there no results? Restrict commit author email addresses, restrict branch names. What? There are so many new options from the last time we checked. Bypass list, branch targeting, yeah. Let's create this and see whether this match. Aha. If we're using a pass key, right, I do have a one password pass key that I can use. Require status check cannot be empty. Please add at least one status check or disable the rule. Okay. Disable this rule for now. Rule set created. Applies to one target, which is main. And where is this status check to pass? Yep. Require branches up to date before the merging and does that work? All right, cool. Now, if I say, if I change the README, just for testing, some changes, Yep, push decline due to repository rule violations. Cannot update. Changes must be made through the merge queue. Changes must be made through a pull request. Require status check Swift is expected. Okay. That's good. We can undo to the last commit. Nice. And let's branch off. What should we name it? So today we're working on a little bit of functionality. Basically, we want to add in whether the ValidStateController, well, at least when you're setting it up, does it keep retrying or do we just pause? So there's a few different states we want to add in as well. Work in progress is already there. Valid, invalid is there. There's another case, that's just called pause. For example, I would like to say, we don't retry whenever we're doing just this. So what do we want to do here? Let's see, dependencies, if we're going to dependencies, and storage, work, storage, validate, they're all here. One more thing to add is the retry. It will be retry. It will give us a sort of retry policy. Something we want to call, and it will give us a... Should we assume this value is always valid? If it is not, we have to check. Yep, that's right. Should we add a retry? And what is the retry policy? Basically that. Type alias retry. It is... let's type never here. What we want to do is a enum retry policy, kind of like that. There's a no retry, and there's a retry with delay, dispatch time interval. What is a dispatch time interval? It's part of the dispatch framework. A number of seconds, milliseconds, microseconds, or nanoseconds. Right. A few things. Let's chat with ChatGPT. Wait, what? How did I create a group? I didn't mean to create a group. Okay. There we go. Let's go back to the chat. So right now I have the ValidStateController, and I want to add in a little bit more functionality to it. Right now it doesn't know whether it should retry and how long it should wait for the retry to happen. There are two parts to solve. So right now it just assumes it's always retrying. I don't want that to happen. So there are two parts need to be figured out. One is that I would like the work to be delayed to happen if there's a retry. If there's no retry, then we just change the state to like paused. The two questions to be answered here is one, with a async work, how do we delay that from happening? Two is, what is a reasonable sort of data structure to use here to define the delay time, whether it's seconds or milliseconds? We do have the dispatch time interval, but with that, we would need to import the dispatch framework, which I don't feel like we have to do. We can just create our own version of that, give a millisecond version and a seconds version. I think that should be good enough. All right, let's see what does ChatGPT returns, and let's give it the code. Here's the code we have so far. Right. If we are retrying, what is the other state? Let's see. There's paused. Probably should call this paused. 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 Initial work in progress. Paused. Initial, paused, work in progress, valid, invalid. Sure. And we would have there's initial, there's pause, there's also a sort of retrying at kind of like a time. Retrying at time-ish. Retrying, and for now, and this one has a to-do. Let's not add retrying for now, because we will need to handle when it is retrying. Hopefully this still builds. I don't want that. Let's see. You can say task.sleep. But that is nanoseconds. So for now, it's just like no retry. Retry gives you, if you call it, if you give, it will have a retry policy. Here is a little bit like, I feel like if the work failed, wouldn't it be easier for whoever is using the SDK to retry themselves and give me... So I don't manage retry. But what happens if... good question. I have no idea. What happens if work fails? What kind of state does this thing goes into? Just failed, like invalid? It will be invalid, and the invalid reason is it failed, and then has the failure and the outside world, right? It can still, the state controller, it does have when we call start, right? It will try to load the state. If it doesn't have a valid state, it will try to request a refresh. But what if we just load the state? It doesn't request the refresh at the very beginning. And if people want to start the refresh, they can just call start refresh or request refresh. And then we will just refresh. Okay, let's see. Await task.sleep. There's a few different versions. Sleep nanosecond, sleep 4, how long, the tolerance, and the clock, and sleep until. Let's see. Await task.sleep 4 seconds. 1. Await task.sleep. If I remember correctly, from until now, yeah, they are only available in macOS 13. And our lowest target is 10.15. All right, so we can't use the fancy ones. Okay, so at least we know there's this method, but yeah, it requires iOS 16, macOS 13. Yep, we can't use that one either. It's not included in the systems that we support. This is 13, 13, 13, 10.15. Okay, good. This one we can use. But this one can throw. Why? It does throw. Available when success is never and failure is never. If the task is cancelled before the time ends, this function throws cancellation error. This function doesn't block the underlying thread. Does it return us anything? Supposedly? Suspend the current task for at least a given duration in nanoseconds. If the task is cancelled before the time ends, if I have a worker that has some kind of work, which is a task, and it has a result, which is work. Okay. And it's deinitialized. The work would be, starting that would be work is a task. Sleeping for 3 seconds. Oh, right. If the value is not valid, do we keep retrying? How do I know whether the value is not valid? Ah, it's inside this thing. Okay. Await, update, update the value, and coming around here. If the value is not, then this is where we want to retry. This is a bit tricky, isn't it? And the other thing is, I don't think I can cancel the work, can I? There we go, find the document. Really need a better way to manage the windows. Okay. Work is a task. Wait a minute. We captured self. Okay. Self.result is work. Completed the task work. Even though the task is still retained once it completes, it no longer causes a reference cycle. We keep a strong reference to the task. We capture the self, but as the task completes, this reference is released. Worker.start. What is this talking about? Task closure lifetime. Okay. Tasks are initialized by passing a closure containing the code that will be executed by a given task. After this code has run to completion, the task has completed, resulting in either a failure or result value. This closure is eagerly released. Retaining a task object doesn't indefinitely retain the closure because any references that a task holds are released after the task completes. Consequently, tasks really need to capture weak references to values. I see. For example, in the following snippet of code, it is not necessary to capture the actor as weak because the task completes, it will let go of the actor reference, breaking the reference cycle between the task and the actor holding it. I see. Okay. A little bit overthinking is always good. If there's no retry, we don't sleep, we don't do the thing. We just say date is exactly that, we return. Interesting. I roughly have an idea. Retry policy, there's no retry, and then there's the retry, and nanoseconds. 64, isn't it? And if I was given a retry, I could say, I can call it, give me a retry policy. Let's try that. It is an escaping retry. Public let retry is retry. The name is a little bit misleading because it's not retrying. It's not the action of retrying. It's actually the retry policy maker or something. Retry policy factory. So it shouldn't be called... It's like work makes sense, but this is not retrying. This is making the retry policy. Retry policy factory. It is, but I don't like how verbose this whole thing is called. But it is definitely not retry. We could just say this is called retry policy, but now it clashes with the enum name retry policy. Help, ChatGPT. Defining a delay type. You want something but lightweight. Common is public enum delay seconds and milliseconds, and nanoseconds is that. You could also have more cases or even parse a double-based seconds value, putting together a retry policy. Ooh. Guard n is smaller than that. Example sketch in context. Here's the thing, I don't want to keep track of how many times I have failed. Let me grab a seat and make some changes to my work environment. Okie dokie. What can we do here, I wonder? Okay, let's just call this RetryPolicy factory. But here's the thing, if I am not managing how many times it has failed, then I'm leaving a lot of work for whoever is using this framework to figure out, okay, they have to have a state outside. So ideally, they would get a thing like this is how many tries, right? This is the first try, this is the second try, this is the third try. Kind of similar to what ChatGPT is saying here. But that means we are tracking how many tries we're doing. And then we have to reset it properly, whether it failed or whether it has succeeded. But I just feel like that is more suited that, like tracking how many attempts and figuring out how we make the retry. Okay. Now, let's not overthink. We are overthinking, and that's why things are complicated. Stash them all, having a clean slate. This still builds and runs, for sure. How about this? How about we have a still it's called retry policy, and it has immediate, sure, static and custom. And there's also no retry. But rather than building all that, we only do two. There is no retry and there is immediate. And but then we're still tracking how many times we're retrying, right? Take a deep breath in. Everything's fine. We just need to add, we just need to evolve this. Public let retry policy being that, and we have a retry policy being passed in, and self dot retry policy is retry policy. Okay. So at least for now, we know for sure if we try to build this. All right. Git switch, create a new one, and it's called retry feature/retry. Calling it retry is fine. Don't need the feature. Actually, I do want the feature. Okay, that's fine. And git branch the retry. Aha, there we go. We have deleted the retry branch. Yeah. And now when we build succeeded. But if we build for test will complain because we're missing the argument for retry policy. Now, if we go back to the state controller, we can say, where do we do the retry actually? We're updating the value and right here. This part gets a bit tricky. So I'm going to rewrite this. If let, actually, so if we have a valid thing, then do that. And return for sure. Otherwise, the value is not valid. Okay. Let's see. Go back to dependencies. If we comment out this part, and this part, test still runs. It is working. Now this is right. If the value is update the state based on whether the value is valid. If the value is not valid, it will request a refresh based on the retry policy. Not please, but policy. Okay. Right, now we just need to add in the retry policy. Go back here. I mean here. So it is invalid, and we would like to say based on dependencies.retry policy. There's no retry, then we're going to the okay, we don't need that anymore. We do the request refresh. So if this is, let's see, we need the state. We need to pause the state. Paused. Initial work in progress. Paused. Yep. And if we go down to the bottom, we would say paused. And now we can just say update state to paused. Now the retry policy can just be When updating with a valid value, if we say there is no retry, yeah, we just have I think we just have one. We have a paused, right? Because we try and there's the pause, and then we say, hey, update, and then we'll have that. I think that is the case. Initial cache miss, pause, invalid, paused. This would be paused. Again, when updating with a invalid value, here, if we say retry policy being no retry, when there is a valid value in the storage, it will just get to valid. When there is an invalid value in the storage, it will become paused. When there is nothing in the storage, it will just be paused. I think that's how it works. Got a few different cases that doesn't agree with me. Yeah, here. So we're expecting initial cache miss and pause. We got initial invalid and valid 42. Why? When there is nothing in the storage when starting the controller, it has an invalid state. We're hoping to get initial invalid cache miss and then it's paused. Oh, let's see. If going to start, we would say try to load the state and we would request a refresh. Unless there is work in progress, then we'll try to refresh. Right, that makes sense. So this is still valid. 42. It has an initial invalid state, then a valid state. I mean, I could fail it, but that's fine. So if you have this controller, you start it, because it is not a retry, it's the first try, it will still call the work. If the work gives it something, it works. Okay. Now, if we go into the updating specs, initial invalid pause valid. We got initial invalid valid 42 and valid 42. Right, because there's nothing in the storage. And then we're updating it. Right. As an initial valid state and a second valid state. Or we could try to change this. If we're not updating it, we are updating it to a valid value though. Comes from first first fetch or first work. when storage is empty comes from update. Okay. This one would have the valid42. That one comes from first work when storage is empty. And then invalid, and then it's paused. When updating with an invalid value, it has an invalid state, then a paused state. Okay. Has an initial invalid state, then a second valid state. Wait. When there's nothing in the storage when starting, it just has one valid state. Has an invalid state and then a pause state. When there is an invalid value in the storage, right, it will say invalid. Wait a minute, but why this is not? When starting the controller, it will have a valid state. The work is always 42, so when there's an invalid state. Why does this one pause? This one shouldn't pause. Load the state. Loading the state is an invalid state. We update the state to that. We request a refresh. Okay, even the author of the SDK is confused, which is a bad sign. Okay, depending on my understanding, oh, we loaded an invalid value. Wait a minute. So we load the state. There is a state. We're going to update. Oh, I see. Because we're going to update, it will. Oh. If no valid state, this is not true anymore. There are two different results. Try to load a valid state from storage. If there is no state, try to load a valid value from storage. If there is no value at all, it will request a refresh. If there is an invalid state, it so we want to know whether there's yeah, I think this needs to change. Try to load a valid value from storage. If there is no value at all, or the value is not valid, it will request a refresh. So we would say guard let stored value is that, and let basically that valid value being the validated. Otherwise, okay. guard. Yeah, let's combine that into one line. So we have a more consistent behavior, right? Guard lets, actually, I like this styling a little bit more because it's a bit more easier to read. Guard let valid value equals validate. Yep. Otherwise, we say update state.invalid, and it will be invalidated from the stored value, and we await request refresh will return. Otherwise, we update the valid value. But what if we say it is a stored value? Should error. All right, let's try this. Yeah, valid value is not used yet. I wish this one takes me to there. It does not. Got initial, invalid, and valid. Yep. That is exactly what I'm hoping to do. Hey, the tests pass, but there is a catch. Then a valid state. Okay. Has an invalid state, has an initial invalid state, and then a valid state. As an initial invalid state, and then a valid state. What about the other part? What about the part that the stored value is invalid? What if the stored value, there is a stored value, it's just not valid? There is an invalid value in the storage, yeah. And we are validating that we do still update the value to be, oh, we do update the state. We're still checking that. And then we are requesting a refresh. But here, it doesn't come here because the value is not valid. Only a valid value would come around here. If there's no stored value, right? How can I write a test to prevent this error? This human error. If there is a stored value, it comes down all the way here. If the value is not valid, it will be kicked out from right here, and then we'll request a refresh. This should be the valid value. Because there is no way I could test, right? But if I know the value is valid, why do I call this? Because it's already validated. I guess I could just do update state.valid valid value. There is a case. There is a case right here where I could say store the value. But if stored value is not a valid value, it wouldn't come here either. Only when the value is stored and it is valid, it will come here. Oh, interesting. Wait a minute. Could I say assert stored value equals valid value? Only valid stored value can end up here. I think. Oh, right. They may not be equatable. Shoot. And there's no way I could do anything else about this either because the value is not equatable. I didn't want it to be equatable. Okay. Interesting. If the stored value is not valid, it will be kicked out. So here, I could say because basically we're just checking whether this value is valid or not. If it is valid, it's just the stored value. Otherwise, it's invalid, and we'll go into that. We didn't need... Ooh, I could just return a bool for this. Could. If the value is valid, we update the state. Set the state if the value is valid. Set a valid state. If the value is valid, set a valid state. Value is not valid. Okay. If the value is not valid, retry based on the policy. Here's the thing, I have never checked. I haven't put down the work in progress state into the thing. So basically it's here. It will be saying state equals dot work in progress. Oh, sorry. I will be updating state dot work in progress. And now we'll have a bunch of other failures because we added in work in progress state. Okay, don't do that for now. No retry and immediate. That's okay. we do want to add something here. No retry does not block the first work. If there is no valid value in the storage. No retry does not block the first work if there's no valid value in the storage, which makes perfect sense, right? Because you said no retry, doesn't say no tries at all. I.e., no retry. Let's see. Let's work with ChatGPT to make sure this language is clear. Let's see. I want to make sure, actually. So I have created the retry policy, and I want to make sure the end user of this API understand when I say no retry in the retry policy, it means no retry. It does not block the first try if there ever is one. And here is my documentation. Help me to proofread. And maybe make it more. And let me know what you think. Okay. No retry allows the initial work call if there is no valid cached value, but prevents any subsequent retry attempt. Okay, I like that. I like that. Let's see. State. Where is the work in progress change? I think it's here. What do we call this, actually? This is the basic retry. Nothing fancy yet. We should add a spec for retry as well. Actually, let me close that. Make this slightly longer so I can see more of the context. Split this up. Yes. I think this is basically changing the load state, right? Always request a refresh if no valid value in storage. That is when we add retry. Sure. 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 Not yet. Okay. Let's see. Actually. Oh, actually, reset this particular file. Yeah, just reset the staged content, but it doesn't sort of hard reset it to the previous committed content, because now I can commit very cleanly. Add retry policy as part of dependencies. Dependencies. Okay. Let's see. Definitely. And maybe. Oh, actually. Reset the state. Yes. Add a paused state. If the state is not valid, it will request a refresh based on the retry policy. Exactly. Update value will request refresh based on retry policy. This is basically we're fixing the test. Has an invalid state and a pause state. Update existing tests. There's really not too much that we have changed. Ooh, let's see. Do we get a new action? Aha, it does not get a new action yet unless we create the pull request. Feature retry. Is there no way that I can ask GitHub Copilot? Copilot? Nope. Let's draft the pull request. This is a to-do. But at least now. Oh, that is the check let's see, check settings, group by status. But why doesn't the check say this thing? I'm very confused. Let's see, rules, rule set, that one, a branch rules. This part I don't understand. Why doesn't it show it? I mean, I do have checks. I bet ChatGPT knows. Let's see. Copy that. GitHub branch protection rules. I have this build step. Oh, the test failed. I wonder why. Must be at the linting. On GitHub actions, but when I go to the rules page, it does not show me as a check. Why? Oh, exceeded the specified max width. Controller. In the controller. Right. Can we go into editing and then in indentation and so there's somewhere I can set the formatting. Display completion, show reformatting guides. Wait a minute. Yeah, I set 80. Okay, if I say invoke, if I can type format, aha, if there is no value at all, or the value is not valid, it's a bit wordy actually. Let's see. If there is no valid value, it will request a refresh. Update the state based on whether the value is valid. If the value is not valid, it will request a refresh based on the retry policy. Request a refresh or state if not working in progress. Request a refresh if the state is not already work in progress. But here's the thing, when we do the refresh, this thing doesn't check. I feel like this should be moved to tool. Move this to refresh. Because you want a retry, right? And good call. Good call. A few different things to change. Let's do the formatting again. See what happens. Format, styling, format code. So it gets happier. There's a few more bits to be worked out, but I am happy with how far I got tonight. I'm just thinking about, should I work a little bit more to get this further, or should I take a pause? Here is the thing. If we call force refresh, and then the force refresh would say, hey, do the refresh. Ideally, we want to cancel the previous work, right? And we also want to know whether there is a thing already in flight. If it is in flight, cancel that. If there's nothing in flight, there's more to this. Cancel in-flight work. If there is in-flight work, cancel that. If there is not, and invalidate it. Check. Oh, how do we know this is a refresh? Oof. It's not. How do we know it is not a refresh? All right, I'm going to take a break from here, and I'll be back again another time. Hopefully you have enjoyed this stream, and I would like to see you back another time. Thank you for watching. See you next time.